My boss looked me straight in the eye in front of 20 people and said, "You don't deserve to attend the company event." And the worst part, he said it like it was a fact, like gravity, like I somehow earned that humiliation. This was after I said no to something he thought I was too scared to refuse. I'm not proud of how long I let him control the narrative. I'm not proud of how many times I stayed quiet just to keep the peace. But that day, right there in the middle of our weekly stand-up, something in me cracked, cleanly, like a plate that had been dropped too many times and finally gave up pretending. Let me back up for a second. I've worked at a mid-sized tech company for almost 4 years. I'm a project manager, one of those people who doesn't get attention when things go right, but gets blamed instantly the moment something goes wrong. I've always been good at staying invisible, organizing timelines, keeping developers sane, smoothing over client expectations. I'm not the loud one. I'm the one people rely on without realizing it. My boss, Martin, loved that about me. Martin is the kind of director who talks like he's on a podcast no one asked him to host. Charismatic, polished, never unprepared. People outside our department adore him. They think he's sharp, ambitious, dependable. Inside the department, everyone knows he plays favorites, demands loyalty, and uses the annual company event like a weapon. See, that event isn't just a fun trip, it's a status marker, a 3-day offsite with executives, investors, and partners. Only top performers are sent, supposedly. In reality, Martin handpicked people based on how useful they were to him. If you made him look good, you were going. If you didn't, you weren't. Career trajectories were built, or quietly buried there. I'd been invited the last 2 years, not because I was special, but because my work propped up Martin's metrics. He always took credit. I always stayed quiet. I didn't like it, but I convinced myself that this was normal office politics. Then came the client rollout. We had a major implementation that slipped by 3 weeks. Not because of incompetence, but because the client kept changing requirements. Everyone knew this. Everyone documented it. But the delay meant our department looked weaker than the others, and Martin had been promising the VP an impeccable record for the quarter. So one Monday morning, he scheduled a one-on-one with me. His tone was friendly, too friendly. That tone he uses when he wants something unethical, but doesn't want to say it out loud. "Ethan," he started, closing the door behind him, "I need the Q2 report tightened up." I knew what tightened up meant, but I still asked, "What exactly needs adjusting?" He leaned back in his chair. "The timeline section. Just reclassify the delays as pending client confirmation and remove the overtime hours. It makes us look like we can't plan." I felt my pulse in my throat. But the delays were caused by the client, and the overtime... He cut me off. "I know, but perception matters. Investors will be at the event. The VP wants this quarter to look clean." I stared at him. "Martin, that's falsifying reporting." He smiled like I'd said something amusing. "It's reframing. Nothing more." "No," I said. Not loudly, not defiantly, just clearly. "I'm not changing factual data." Something in his expression flickered, just for a second, like he couldn't believe I had interrupted the script. But he recovered quickly. "Okay," he said, standing up. "Do what you want." Except it wasn't do what you want. It was. There will be consequences. And there were. Small at first. He stopped copying me on emails I needed to track. He reassigned a client call I'd prepared for all week. He made mild jokes about my rigidness during retro, just enough to put people on edge, not enough for HR to flag. But then came the list. Every year the department gathers to hear who will attend the event. People pretend it's no big deal, but you can feel the tension. It tells you where you stand, whether you're seen, whether you matter. The room was buzzing, people shifting in their chairs, pretending they weren't listening too closely. Martin projected the list onto the screen. Names popped up one by one. Emma, Luis, Catherine, Joel, my team lead, 2 analysts, even the new hire who joined 6 weeks ago. But not me. At first, I thought maybe my name was on the next slide. Maybe he split the list. Maybe I missed it somehow. Then someone, God bless him, innocent, clueless, asked, "Hey, what about Ethan?" And Martin, without even turning from the screen, said it. "He doesn't deserve to attend the company event." The room went still. It wasn't just what he said. It was how casual it sounded, as if he were reading weather conditions, as if my entire year of work boiled down to one sentence he felt entitled to throw out like trash. I didn't react, not outwardly. I didn't flinch or argue or try to save face. I just stared at the back of his head and felt something quiet settle inside me. Not anger, not shame, clarity, because in that moment I realized something he didn't. He thought he just put me in my place. But what he actually did was give me the one thing I'd been missing all year, a reason to stop protecting him. I wish I could say I marched straight to HR after that meeting. I didn't. I sat back down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pretended to work while my ears rang. People avoided eye contact with me for the rest of the day, not because they hated me, but because they were scared of what looking at me would mean. It's funny, when someone gets humiliated publicly, the shame doesn't just stick to them. It sticks to anyone who sees it and doesn't do anything. Around 3 p.m., our data analyst, Joel, dropped a message on Teams. "Hey man, that was rough. You okay?" I stared at it for a long time before replying, "I'm fine, thanks." It wasn't true, but it was the only thing I could say without opening a door I didn't know how to close. 2 days passed and the small punishments started to stack. I noticed I was no longer invited to the recurring call with our biggest client, even though I'd built the entire timeline for their rollout. The invite stayed on my calendar, then disappeared without a word. When I checked the participants, my name was gone. A junior PM's name was there instead. In our sprint planning, Martin interrupted me mid-sentence just to clarify that my estimates had been a bit optimistic lately. He smiled when he said it, like a dad teasing his kid at a barbecue. Everyone chuckled politely. The dev lead wouldn't look at me. None of these things were big enough to screenshot. They were soft pressure, the kind that doesn't show up in any official record but still leaves bruises. The first tangible thing I did was stupidly simple. I started a folder. Desktop, Martin, Conversations. Nothing shady. No secret recordings, just copies of emails, exported chat logs of specific threads where he'd asked for reframing and alignment of numbers, calendar invites to one-on-ones where reporting was discussed. I added a note file with dates and short summaries. APR 3 asked to remove overtime hours from report. Declined. APR 10 asked to reclassify client delays. Declined. APR 17 public comment about not deserving to attend event. It felt petty at first, like I was planning a revenge fantasy I'd never actually follow through on. But the more I wrote, the more I realized something. This wasn't about a trip. It was about a pattern. The annual event was just the stage he wanted. The script, his script, had been running long before that. The first time I considered going to HR, I talked myself out of it before I even typed their address into a new email. What was I going to say? My boss is mean? He embarrassed me. HR loves phrases like communication breakdown and personality mismatch. They don't love the person you promoted is casually asking me to falsify data. So instead, I made an appointment with my own conscience. It sounds dramatic, but it was literally a 15-minute walk around the block at lunch. No headphones, no phone, just me and the dull gray sky over the parking lot. I asked myself one question. If this blows up 6 months from now and the data trail leads back to you, are you comfortable with what's under your name? The answer was no, not even close. So I did something small but big for me. I booked a slot with HR through the internal portal, not as a complaint, as seeking advice. The HR business partner assigned to our department, Sarah, met with me in a glass-walled room that sounded busier than it looked. She smiled a trained, neutral smile and started with the usual script. "Thanks for reaching out, Ethan. How can I support you today?" I didn't mention the event at first. I focused on facts. I've been asked multiple times to adjust reporting in ways that don't reflect what actually happened, I said. I've refused. After that, my access to certain meetings changed, and I was publicly singled out in a team meeting in a way that felt retaliatory. She didn't write retaliatory. I know because I watched her notes on the laptop. She typed, "Concerns about communication style and expectations." "Who asked you to adjust the reports?" she said, even though she already knew the answer. "Martin." "Can you give an example?" I walked her through one case. Dates, wording, the exact cells he wanted changed. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't add commentary, just the sequence. She nodded a lot. "That sounds like a misalignment on expectations," she said carefully. "Have you tried addressing this directly with him?" "I told him I wouldn't change factual data," I replied. That's when other things started happening. She hesitated, then sighed quietly. "Ethan, I'm not minimizing what you're feeling," she said, "but challenging leadership styles can be tricky. I would recommend documenting these incidents, which you're already doing, and maybe we can set up a mediated conversation with him." A mediated conversation. Me and Martin in a room with someone from HR trying to pretend everyone had equal power. I could already see how that would go. He'd wash it all in corporate language. I'd end up looking overly sensitive. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course. If someone in leadership is asking for changes to reporting that could mislead investors or senior management, is that still a communication issue?" Her fingers froze over the keyboard. "That would fall more under compliance and ethics," she said slowly. "Do you believe that's what's happening?" "I believe I'm being asked to do things that would make numbers look different from reality because of who is going to see them at the event," I said. "If I did what he asked and it was audited later, I'd be the one who actually touched the file." That was the first time she stopped speaking in safe phrases. "Okay," she said quietly. "We do have an internal ethics channel. It's separate from HR and can be anonymous, but it doesn't have to be. They handle anything that might impact financial reporting, investor communication, or legal risk." "Can I use it without it turning into a circus?" I asked. "It won't be a circus," she said. "It will be procedural. If there's something there, they'll look at it. If there isn't, they'll close it." It wasn't exactly comforting, but it was honest. When I left that room, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed, like I'd stepped one foot off a ledge, and now I had to decide what to do with the other. That night, I opened the ethics portal from my kitchen table. The language was cold and formal. "Describe the concern. Attach any relevant documentation. Indicate if you are willing to be contacted." I wrote out everything: dates, requests, exact phrases like, "It just needs to look better for the event," and "investors don't need the operational detail." I attached email threads, calendar invites, and that little text log I'd been keeping. I checked the box that said I was willing to be contacted and put my real name. Before I hit submit, my fingers hovered over the mouse. Martin had power. Real power. Connections. A good reputation with the VP. I had clean hands and a folder on my desktop. But for the first time since he said I didn't deserve to be seen, I realized something important. I might not have status, but I had facts. And facts, when you line them up properly, are heavier than charm. I clicked to submit. The confirmation screen was plain. "Your report has been received. A member of the Ethics and Compliance team will review your case. Reference ID, EC4173. I closed my laptop and just sat there in the dark kitchen, listening to the fridge hum. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email. "Dear Ethan, we have received your ethics report, EC4173. Your concerns fall within the scope of our review. A dedicated compliance officer will be assigned, and you may be contacted for additional details. Thank you for your cooperation and for your commitment to accurate reporting." It was the first time anyone in the company had thanked me for not changing the numbers. I had no idea yet, But that dry little email was the moment the ground under Martin's feet actually started to move. The email from compliance didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like a countdown. For the first 2 days, nothing happened. Martin strutted through the office like a man rehearsing for a spotlight. He had no idea the ground had already cracked under him. In fact, he was more confident than ever, almost euphoric. He talked louder in meetings, joked more aggressively, and kept weaving the company event into every conversation. T-minus 2 weeks, he said one morning, tapping his watch. We need every number polished. Investors love clean decks. Every time he said clean, I felt the back of my neck burn. On Wednesday at 9:14 a.m., a calendar invite popped up on my screen. Compliance interview, 30 minutes. The inviter was someone I'd never met. Dana Harrington, Senior Compliance Officer. Compliance interviews aren't common in our company. When they happen, they're quiet, private, controlled. Dana joined via Teams, no camera, just a calm voice that sounded like someone trained to detect friction in a sentence. Ethan, thank you for making time, she said. I need to ask you some questions for the ongoing review. This isn't disciplinary. It's informational. She asked for dates, wording, context, who requested what, how often, whether any pressure felt explicit or implied. Every answer I gave, she typed in real time, pausing only to clarify details. When did the first request to alter reporting occur? April 3rd, a one-on-one meeting. I have the invite and follow-up email. And when did you decline? In the meeting, immediately. And after that, were there any changes that might be considered retaliatory? She didn't say punishment. She didn't have to. Yes, I said. And I walked her through it. Not emotionally, mechanically, like reading coordinates. She didn't react, but when I mentioned the public comment, the moment he said I didn't deserve to attend the event, her typing slowed. When the call ended, she said one thing that kept echoing in my head. Ethan, thank you. This aligns with information we've already gathered. Already gathered, which meant I wasn't the only one. That afternoon, I learned that 2 other people had been interviewed, our analyst Joel and a developer named Priya, who'd been on the delayed rollout. They didn't know the full story, but they had noticed patterns. Meetings reassigned, tasks redistributed, Martin's sudden performance feedback comments. Their pieces and mine were starting to overlap, like fragments of the same sentence. Still, the office moved on like nothing was happening. At lunch, Martin walked by my table and clapped my shoulder like we were old friends. Hey, Ethan, he said, smiling. Just wanted to let you know. VP wants the final investor deck by Monday. I'll need your section polished. He said it with that smug ease of someone who believed every room still belonged to him. The truth was, it did, for now. But something changed the next morning. I noticed him in a glass conference room with HR, our HRBP, the director, and someone from legal. His posture wasn't relaxed anymore. He kept folding and unfolding his arms. When he walked out, he didn't make eye contact with anyone. At 2 p.m., we got a department-wide email titled Prep Meeting for Investor Event, Agenda Review. Attendees, VP Product, HRBP, Compliance, Director of PMO, Martin, and me. My stomach tightened. I hadn't been in a room like that before. Those meetings were normally above my level, way above. When I arrived, Martin was already there, pacing. His suit jacket was off. He looked impatient, irritated, but still confident, like he believed he'd charm his way through whatever this was. VP walked in last. He didn't shake hands. He just sat down, opened a folder, and said, "Let's align on some concerns before the event." No warmth, no small talk. Compliance started. We've completed our initial review regarding reporting integrity in the Q2 rollout. At this stage, several discrepancies have been identified. Martin straightened. Discrepancies? Look, if this is about Ethan, it's not about Ethan, Compliance interrupted calmly. It's about the instructions you provided him. I watched something flicker across Martin's face, the same shock he'd shown when I told him no. like he couldn't comprehend that someone might not be playing his game. "I never instructed anyone to falsify anything," he said, voice tight. Compliance clicked to a slide. On the screen, timestamps of report drafts, version histories, metadata showing which user made which edits, and which edits were attempted but not saved. And next to those, screenshots of his messages. Remove overtime. Delay classification should not appear. It needs to look better for the event. Out of context, may be defensible. In context, it was devastating. "That's reframing," he insisted on. "Every company reframes. You can't run an event like this without putting forward the best version of our work." VP looked at him for a long time. "Martin," he said quietly, "investor decks must match operational reports. You know that. If the numbers look perfect and the logs show otherwise, that's not reframing. That's misrepresentation." Martin's voice rose. "This is ridiculous. Everyone here knows Ethan's been—" And then he pointed at me. That was his mistake. VP turned to me. "Ethan, in your words, did you ever alter factual data at his request?" "No," I said. "I refused every time." "And did you document those instructions?" "Yes." "Do you have copies to provide to compliance?" I nodded. "I already did." Silence. Tight, thick silence. Then HR spoke, formal and crisp. "Given the findings, Martin, effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave pending full review. Your responsibilities will be redistributed. Your participation in the investor event is revoked." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. My chest didn't swell with victory. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt surreal, like watching a domino fall in slow motion after weeks of pretending it wouldn't move. "And Ethan," VP added, turning to me, "you'll take over the project briefing for the event. Compliance and I will help you finalize the deck. Your accuracy is the reason we caught this before it escalated." I nodded. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Inside me, something loosened, something that had been coiled for too long. Martin finally spoke. "You're ruining my career over nothing," he said quietly, almost to himself. But it wasn't nothing. It had never been nothing. He walked out without looking at me. That evening, when the office thinned out and the floors grew quiet, I sat alone at my desk, staring at the updated attendee list for the event. My name wasn't just on it. It was highlighted, and for the first time all year, I felt the shift fully, not loud, not dramatic, but deep. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I was just getting started. In the days after Martin was put on leave, the office moved through a strange kind of quiet. Not shocked quiet, not mourning, more like the air after a storm when everything is still deciding what to look like now. People didn't talk openly about what happened, but they moved differently. Some walked past my desk with a nod they'd never given before. Others avoided eye contact entirely, terrified of being associated with anything under investigation. But even in the silence, one truth was obvious. For the first time in years, the room didn't revolve around Martin. I didn't take any satisfaction in his empty office, not at first. It looked sad, like a stage after the play ended. Papers neatly stacked, a succulent he never watered, a branded notebook he used as a prop more than a tool. Everything felt smaller without him inside it. But then I opened my laptop and saw the updated project structure. Acting lead, Ethan Porter. Event presenter, Ethan Porter, and a VP product. It wasn't a promotion, not officially, but it was a line in the sand, one drawn quietly without applause, that said, "We trust this person with the truth." The next week was a blur of work. VP and I met every morning to rebuild the investor deck from scratch. He wasn't warm or friendly, but he was direct, fair, and most importantly, real. He hated fluff. He refused to present anything he couldn't defend. In a strange way, we were the same that way. "Ethan," he said once, tapping a slide with his pen, "this section on constraint management, keep that. Don't soften it. Investors don't expect perfect delivery. They expect competence. Honesty is competence. Hearing that felt like someone finally speaking the language I'd been whispering for years. Compliance helped us verify everything in the deck, not to control the tone, just to make sure every number we showed was exactly what existed in the system. They didn't tell me what to say. They didn't script me. They just checked the foundation so that whatever I stood on wouldn't collapse later. No one treated me like a hero, and I didn't want them to. What I wanted was far simpler. A workplace where telling the truth didn't require a crisis. 2 days before the event, HR asked me to stop by. Not the small HRBP office. The big one where the walls are padded with soundproofing and the chairs don't squeak. Sarah, the HRBP, smiled softly when I entered. "This isn't a disciplinary meeting," she said immediately, almost apologetically. "We wanted to discuss your role moving forward." She slid a document across the table. Temporary Role Adjustment Agreement. A fancy phrase for, we want you to run the project, not by title, but by responsibility. It covered decision-making authority, cross-team access, communication protocols, and protection from performance retaliation while the investigation continued. There was nothing manipulative in it, nothing sneaky. I read it twice. "This isn't permanent," I said. "It's not meant to be," she replied. "Permanent decisions come after the investigation, but right now, you're the only person in the department with full context on the rollout and no conflicts of interest." I appreciated the honesty. I signed it. That night, I got an email from a recruiter I'd spoken to weeks earlier, back when I was still trying to convince myself that looking for other jobs was premature. They wanted a second interview. A real one, not just screening. I scheduled it for the week after the event. Not because I was desperate to leave, but because I finally understood something. Stability doesn't come from staying somewhere. It comes from knowing you can walk away. The investor event took place at a hotel ballroom 2 cities over. Clean banners, cold lighting, round tables with overpriced pastries. Corporate ritual at its most polished. When I arrived wearing the one suit I owned that actually fit, I expected to feel like an imposter. Instead, I felt level, steady, like the ground under me was finally solid for once. VP opened the session with his usual calm confidence. Then he introduced me. "This is Ethan Porter. He's been leading the operational recovery for our Q2 rollout. He'll walk you through what actually happened, what we learned, and how we're moving forward. Not the sanitized version, not the inflated version, the real one." I stepped up to the podium. My voice didn't shake. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't diminish anything. I explained the client-driven delays, the mitigation strategies, the overtime issues we corrected by restructuring internal workflows. I highlighted the risks we caught early and the ones that blindsided us. I watched the investors' faces, measured, analytical, but receptive. When I finished, VP closed the presentation with a single sentence. "This clarity is why our teams are stronger today than they were last quarter." It wasn't praise. It wasn't flattery. It was acknowledgement, the kind that actually matters. Afterward, during the networking block, a few people approached me. Not with the fake enthusiasm Martin used to chase, but with grounded curiosity. One man in a navy suit asked, "Are you the one who rebuilt the risk model?" "Yes," he nodded. "Good work." That was it. Simple. Real. Enough. On the ride home, I opened the window and let the cold air hit my face. For the first time in months, I felt the weight in my chest shift. Not disappear, but settle somewhere I could carry it without breaking. 3 months later, the investigation concluded. Martin resigned. The announcement was 3 lines long. No tribute, no farewell breakfast. Just a footnote in the company newsletter. I heard from a colleague that he tried to frame the resignation as a personal decision, but everyone quietly understood what happened. The logs, the messages, the attempted edits, they didn't lie. He left the same way he led, pretending the story was different from the truth. A week after that, I accepted an offer from another company. Not because mine was bad, and not because they failed me. They handled the situation by the book, and in the end, with integrity. But I was ready to stop living in someone else's shadow. On my last day, I packed my desk slowly. No drama, no victory lap, just breathing, deeply, freely, for the first time in a long time. As I walked out, VP stopped me near the elevator. "You did the right thing," he said. No smile, no theatrics, just fact. "Thank you," I replied, "for treating the truth like it mattered." He nodded once. "It always does." I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, and the office became just another place I once survived. My new job didn't have a glamorous annual event. No badges, no inflated metrics, no politics disguised as alignment. Just people trying to do good work without lying to each other. The first week there, my new manager said something so simple, I almost laughed. "If something's wrong, tell me early. I don't like surprises. Direct, honest, normal. The kind of normal I had nearly convinced myself didn't exist." One evening, after my second week at the new company, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee and let my mind drift back to that sentence Martin threw at me. "You don't deserve to attend the company event." I felt nothing now. Not anger, not shame, just clarity. He was right about one thing. I didn't deserve to stand in a room built on lies. I deserved better, and I finally chose it.